Welcome, everyone, to the Captive Audience. It is the 4th of March, and you're going to be watching this just prior to President Trump giving his first major address to Congress. And we are very privileged here today to have with us co-founder of the Captive Audience and senior editor for restoration-news.com. And also writer for a number of different publications that you can read his work in the American Spectator in particular. Jeff Reynolds. Jeff, welcome to the show from Florida.
Yes. I'm in the free state of Florida, and I'm coming back to Oregon to say hello to all my old friends. So, Kevin, thanks so much for having me back on the show. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, and you've had some very interesting articles. Of course, I dip in every once in a while, see what you're up to, and read them. And there was a little cluster of them lately. But then, what just in general, before we go into those articles, just share your thoughts and feelings at a high level of the Trump administration so far. And I don't think you and I have talked since the election. So
yeah, no,
it
was before Election Day. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it was we kind of had the idea that it was going to go the way we wanted it to. Kamala Harris just wasn't going to get any traction with the voters, and we saw that kind of coming. But it was still, Election Day was still a little bit nerve-wracking. I thought it was going to be several days before we had a final verdict on the election. It turned out, we knew that night, and it was a relief. After 8 years of all of that we had to go through. Yeah. It was a sense that I haven't felt before. I got involved in politics in the Tea Party movement. And for the first time in my involvement in politics, I actually had hope that we could create a halfway decent functioning government. And I never felt that before. I didn't know what to do with myself.
Well, and a government that will do any of what it said it was going to do,
right?
That it, that wasn't a ho-hum agenda. It was an aggressive one.
Very aggressive, and exactly what we were looking for. And we did give Donald Trump a mandate. There's no question of that. He won 52% or 53% of the popular vote, but he had a strong majority of the electoral votes. And the reason he won was because of those campaign promises to clean things up, and that fusion of the movement that he created with Elon Musk and Robert F. Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and all the folks that he brought together in this weird movement that you can't really define, but it's everything that the voters have been screaming for decades.
Yeah, and I think, and it wasn't straight out of conservatism 101 or republicanism 101. It was definitely his style, but he's also dramatically impacted the party and how it sees things. Like, frankly, other than the typical suspects, we're really talking about the same senators with maybe one new one that is heading for the door anyway, Mitch McConnell, but the typical like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. They're the only ones that seem to be taking a stance in the Senate against any of his nominees. And, we won just enough in the Senate to make that a process that rolls forward pretty smoothly. And yeah, all these folks are going in and getting through.
Yeah, no, it's really true. And it was by the skin of our teeth too, right? I mean, we got 3 extra votes and 3 squishies. So, if we need JD Vance to cast the tie-breaking vote, I mean, how many times did Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote? So turnabout is fair play, and I'm all about it. But, we saw that with Pete Hegseth's nomination and confirmation as Secretary of Defense, where it was a tie vote and JD Vance cast the tie-breaking vote. That that kind of broke the seal. It kind of created this momentum for Trump's other nominees, and there was less resistance. They realized, okay, that was kind of contentious, but it really wasn't the end of the world. And I think maybe we'll give his nominees a bit of a chance, and we can see what they'll do. And again, with this mandate that Trump has, you've got Kash Patel at FBI, you've got Tulsi Gabbard with the Director of National Security or Intelligence, excuse me. You've got Kennedy at HHS. You got Linda McMahon, who was just confirmed as the education secretary. She put out a letter today saying that this is the final mission of the agency. That she didn't say it outright, but she's going to fulfill Trump's campaign promise to unwind the entire agency and disperse its functions among other areas of the government, and revert most of it back to the states where it belongs. The federal government has no business in local education to begin with. So all of that stuff, I know I voted for it. I know you voted for it. Doge and Elon Musk and everything else. I voted for that, and I'm rooting for Godzilla to destroy Tokyo. That's what I've been saying over and over again. And man, I couldn't be more thrilled with what's going on.
Well, and even this is a Trump 2.0. Trump administration 2.0 is definitely more committed, moving faster, more organized, more certain of what it is and what it wants to be than Trump 1.0, and in important ways. So this is something that we're seeing, and it's totally like the Democrats, because of how they lost the election, because of losing both the Electoral College and the popular vote.
Right.
And losing control of the Senate and not getting control of the House.
They were rebuked. They weren't just defeated. They were rebuked. Everybody was sick and tired of the Biden, Harris, Obama wokeism that had infested every part of our society.
Yeah. And that's exactly what is being removed, dismantled, and then some, because I think the Democrats actually didn't expect Doge to go this far. They thought it was going to still be the window dressing that we'd seen even under, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama when they had promised this in the past. And all they did is expand the government. Well, Bill Clinton gets a little credit for simply letting the Republican Congress do things and signing bills.
Hey, but, they did actually fire several 100,000 federal employees, so you got to give them credit. It was obviously under pressure from Newt Gingrich and the contract with America, but they did actually go through and trim some of the fat in the federal government. So you got to give them credit for that. But that also then undermines all of the arguments again by the Democrats today against what Doge is doing now. If Bill Clinton and Al Gore can execute this plan, then Elon Musk can too.
Yeah, and I think the Democrats have gone to that thing that they always go to when they don't have a point, when they just don't have a case for what they're saying in opposition, is they're just lying. They're literally filling town halls with 500 to 2,000 people.
Yeah,
it's all progressives. Yep. They rig them so that no conservative or reasonable minded person could show up and ask a question they might actually have to answer and hold them accountable.
Right.
And they've told all those people that you're going to lose your Social Security, you're going to lose your Medicare. It's all going to be slashed and eliminated. And that all these firings of federal workers is totally unjustified, illegal, unconstitutional. And
it's causing a constitutional crisis.
Another constitutional crisis. And the best part of it is they keep attacking everybody in the executive branch besides President Trump as being unelected, which has always been the case. It's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
the hundreds of thousands of people they're firing, not a single one of them was elected either. You know, the IRS agents that they're going to send after normal people for their $600 Venmo transactions, those not a single one of those was elected either. So you know, it falls on deaf ears, and I think it's really falling on deaf ears. I think the American public approve of what's going on right now, and you see it in the approval ratings for Donald Trump. He's never been as popular as he is right now.
Yeah, he's popular. The policies are even more popular than he is.
Right.
Which means that that's the direction his popularity is going to go as he carries these policies out. And the Democrats are flailing. They're lying. I just saw the sort of rundown on what they're going to do tonight. There's
oh yeah.
Yeah, they're saying they're just not going to show up. Wyden and Merkley are going to spend their time listening to voters in the best state in the country, which I think Wyden had to say that because he actually lives in New York and doesn't spend really any time in what he thinks is the best state.
I was going to say which one is the best state? Yeah, because
how does he pick his favorite state?
Yeah. Yeah, which mansion does he talk to, or is he living in at that point when he says that?
Some of them are showing up. Sorry, I'll take that back. Merkley is, I guess, showing up because he's going to have a guest that is a fired public affairs officer for the Ochoa National Forest and Crooked River National Grassland.
A public affairs official. Boy, that's a vital position.
He said that we can't, that's an essential service and we can't live without it. We can't possibly lack a person who's going to come and put out statements on behalf of bureaucrats in two forests.
Come on, man.
I know.
Give me a break. Yeah, no, you mentioned the way Trump came in a lot more focused in his second term. I think his first term, we all saw he kind of almost didn't even expect to get elected, didn't have a plan for when he first got there. He relied on what he thought were his allies in the Republican Party, and they ended up undermining him and blocking him at every turn. And this time around, he knew he had 4 years of experience. He knew what he was going to face. And so he spent several months, those are the reports, he spent several months prior to Election Day putting together his transition team and coming up with a very focused plan. And, you know, there's a lot of folks that have said this, that he could not have been as successful in his second term had he just won re-election in 2020. He had to kind of go through all of the crap that they put him through in order to really focus and realize what was really important about executing a plan in his second term.
Well, and I've noticed, believe it or not, here on the ground that it's given some courage to Republicans who are in the super minority. It's one of the few places in the country where Republicans lost a little bit of ground. They lost a seat in the state Senate and then seat in the state House, which are razor thin in a system that we know is not trustworthy election wise, given the fact that we had nearly 54,000 people that couldn't prove that they had any form of citizenship, but they're still in the voter rolls and they're still voting. But Republicans are shocking Democrats by saying they want less regulation on housing construction. I just heard Christine Drazan, who's the Republican minority leader, at a Republican meeting say "fight, fight, fight" at the end of her address. that should speak volumes. And
right, yeah, when the establishment is starting to use Trumpisms,
they know. And of course, what do they got to lose? In the super duper minority, it doesn't really matter. You may as well.
The logo for so long has been lose, lose, lose.
Exactly.
So, might as well switch things up a little.
Yeah, and you've got Democrats like fake moderate, which turned out she went right back to her progressive roots within weeks. She withdrew from Doge. Representative Val Hoyle, I'm sure you remember her from years past.
Oh,
she says Elon Musk doesn't understand anything about government.
And Val Hoyle does.
Well, what she is, Ronald Reagan used to say, it's not so much that Democrats are bad people, it's what they know is so wrong. I think I'm paraphrasing it a little bit, but what they think they know. But yeah, let's dive into some of the articles that you've put out there. I don't know which one you like to tackle first, and I think we'll end with the education one that's coming up. But why don't we talk about
Okay.
Americans want a government free of waste, fraud, and abuse, and then we'll talk international stuff.
Yeah, man, it just that's a perfect encapsulation of what we've already been talking about. That his approval ratings are higher than they've ever been in his political career since he was on television. So it really proves that if he's got this mandate and he is acting on that mandate, people want to see Doge go in and start fire. I was just reminded, I forgot all about this, but there's this what the heck was that stupid the Institute for Federal Employees or something like that. It was an academic house that was on the campus of the University of Virginia, that all it did was spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year training bureaucratic managers to manage bureaucracies. It just blew hundreds of millions of dollars. Nobody knew it existed, and it was created by executive order, and he just signed an executive order
Poop.
saying this is a ridiculous waste of resources. So it's that kind of stuff. Like, we look at government, not even like the Tea Party, just like some guy on his couch watching TV and saying, why are we spending money on that stuff? Well, you know what? Everybody's starting to realize there's a point there, and we should actually be asking these questions.
Yeah, that's interesting. In your article, you said it's a realization of the Tea Party dream. It is. Trump 1.0 started to deliver a lot of the things that politicians promised the Tea Party they would do, and he just went and he did some of them, and people were like, "Oh, I guess he's not like a moderate former Democrat squish. He's like, I said I was going to do it. I'm doing it. It's done." And then the Democrats lost their freaking minds, but
well, that's what
and
they do.
and including the appointments that he has this time, it's really promise kept.
Yeah, no doubt. And I will freely confess, as a Tea Party OG and somebody that was very strongly in favor of, I was on the Ted Cruz presidential campaign in the primary. I am as Tea Party as it gets, and I was skeptical. I was very skeptical of Donald Trump, especially the first time around. Things started turning around for me middle of his first term, and by the end, I was like, we have to reelect this guy.
Yeah.
I did vote for him the first time. I was very close to not voting for him, but because I just didn't think he would live up to the Tea Party ideals just based on his rhetoric, But he got in and he started kicking butt and cleaning up, and it slowly won me over. And then you realize this guy he's not saying the stuff in the same language, but he is exactly the kind of wrecking ball we need to break things and then rebuild the things that need to be rebuilt and get rid of all the rest.
It was very interesting. A Mormon political activist friend of mine here in Oregon that we both know, I'll just leave his name out of it, but he said in 2016, he's like, okay, I voted for him. I'm a Republican. He was the Republican nominee. Didn't feel real good about it. And he said, by 2020, when I talked to him about it again, he goes, first of all, he wasn't such a big fan of Mitt Romney anymore, which is interesting.
No doubt.
But the other thing he said is, I'll tell you this. I would crawl over broken glass to vote for Donald Trump now. And that is where a lot of people,
especially after Butler, Pennsylvania,
yes.
right? When he raised his fist after almost having his head blown off, it was over.
I think the Democrats must have looked at that and said, "Oh, poop. This guy, we're not going to be able to destroy him. We thought we could, and he's real and made of much tougher stuff than certainly anybody he was facing on the ballot." And of course, then they did this whole thing with Kamala Harris, but he was consistent. He never stopped saying the things that he said. He just kept saying them instead of going to do them. And and really, the Democrats kept saying the dumbest things I've ever heard over and over. as if they didn't think that people wanted that. I don't get it.
Right. Yeah, no, they still haven't figured out retail politics. It's really fascinating to watch. All they've got is negative campaigning. You and I have been through the mud before, innumerable times in political campaigns. Negative campaigning is designed to suppress turnout and it's not about your guy. It's about making the other guy look bad and making people lose faith that guy can actually win. That's the only reason it exists, and that's all they got because they don't have any ideas of their own.
There was something, and I'll give Mitch McConnell some credit for this. There was something that was done in his first term that has turned out to be absolutely critical to destroying the Democrat strategy to resist what's happening now in the second term, and it is the courts. You know, that 3-vote margin, we need every bit of it in the Supreme Court. Three more conservative justices, and the fact that he did it even when they said, it's a historic thing. And it wasn't just that. There were a ton of other court appointments that he did to populate the judiciary, and their plan, as you point out here, they believe that the president doesn't have the power to limit or control or direct the executive branch. And it kind of says it in the Constitution, like verbatim. And then it's so easy to prove how something like USAID has gone well beyond the scope of what Congress set for it.
Right. And of course, USAID was created by an executive order and then given congressional mandates subsequent to that. But there's no reason why we can't go in there as, with our representative of we the people, the guy that we elected to go in there and actually clean it up, and his cronies, the people that we knew were going to go with him, Elon Musk and Robert Kennedy and all the rest. We knew those guys were going to be there, and we wanted that. That's what we voted for. So the idea that we, the people, don't have control over our own government, I don't know why the Democrats think this is a winning argument, but this idea that there's a constitutional crisis is absurd. This is the first time they've ever read the Constitution, and they stopped at "we the people" and then said constitutional crisis.
And what could be more democratic than win the Electoral College and the popular vote, and then people actually get the president that they elected to go and direct the federal government to do what it's doing? And it's like, it's anti-democratic. No, it's actually the most democratic thing that Democrats could pretend to, because they really aren't Democrats with a small d anymore. They are Democrats with, with a big P and a big S, progressive socialists. They're not, they're authoritarians, and
they are. That's 100%.
And this is a huge defeat for them. On every level.
Yeah.
And when they say, well, Donald Trump's being a dictator, no, he's just being a president. That's it.
Right. He's being the executive. He's executing his authority under the Constitution. So it really is just that it's not anti-democratic. It's anti-democratic party.
Yeah. Which, I don't even think you have to say that it has a partisan bent to it when you say, just imagine if President Trump decided to spend $26 million on buying subscriptions to Fox Nation and the Wall Street Journal, and just through USAID. The Democrats would absolutely lose their mind. They would use it as a basis for impeachment. They would go straight at the issue as if it was the worst thing any president had ever done. And yet it was done, and they've said nothing about it. There's no well, maybe we shouldn't have been buying Politico Pro, and then getting great coverage from them. And I can't wait for NPR to get defunded. And
oh my goodness, that's 40 years overdue. It's crazy. So yeah, no, there's all kinds of things that need to be defunded. It's hard to know where to start. It's a good thing he has a solid team all the way up and
That's right.
down.
But this is a good transition to what's happening on the international front, because there's a revolution happening there too, and it's emitting from the United States, but the same current that brought in this populist, we don't want an open border, we don't want unlimited illegal immigration, and maybe we don't want to pay for endless wars and all of that. Uh, it exists in Europe. It's just a different system. And somebody went there and actually told them that very recently. And you
Right.
wrote an article about that.
Yeah, JD Vance addressed the security conference there in Germany with all of the leaders of all the European nations sitting there. And he told them, you are not upholding the ideals of Western culture. You're not being good stewards of what made Western culture great, the individual liberties and the freedom of speech and all of that stuff. And that's, he really, I don't know why this was shocking, because it's been so obvious. But it's there's such a disconnect between what's reported and what's real, and we've decried the liberal bent of the mass media for a long time, but really one of the greatest services the Trump administration has done is to completely undermine mass
Yeah.
media and the corporate legacy media, and to empower direct to consumer media. This is the stuff that, the more we get exposed to it as consumers, the more we want. And there's a reason for that, because we've been starving for the truth for so long. And that's what JD Vance did when he went and gave that speech in Germany. He just, used it as the opportunity to go right to their faces and say, look, you guys are arresting people for silently praying on a sidewalk. You're arresting people for posts on X. You're not upholding Western civilization the way your forefathers asked you to do, and that's the reason you're failing as a continent. One of the facts that I put in that article is that in the 90s, when the European Union was first formed, it had 6 member nations at its beginning, and its GDP was larger than that of the United States. It was slightly higher. It was on par, but slightly higher. Now, with 27 member nations, quadruple the size of what it used to be, its GDP is only 60% that of the United States. Why is that? It's because socialism has taken over, and the European Union has jammed socialist top-down regulations down everybody's throat, stifling their economy. And they're doing the same thing with defense. They're refusing to defend their own borders and making it a moral issue that the United States is failing Europe, that we're not defending their borders for them.
Yeah, and they're talking tough to Russia and about Ukraine, standing behind us, thinking, it's like the pipsqueak that goes and on a playground and yells at somebody and says, "Am I big pal here?"
It's like those 2 dogs on Looney Tunes, the little terrier and the big bulldog, right?
But big bulldog says, "Wait a second, you're going to fight. Put your money where your mouth is, or at least 2% plus of it."
And within 48 hours, you had Ursula von der Leyen out there saying it is now the era of rearmament. She's given speeches calling on European nations to invest in defense and ramp up their defense spending and their material manufacturing. So, yeah, it's all it took was somebody to say, the emperor has no clothes. You people are grifters, and we're not going to fund your defense anymore. And they're like, oh, well, I guess we're just going to have to be adults now.
That Chancellor of Germany, Scholz, he got pounded because he sucked.
Yeah.
But he's the one who got up there right after Putin invaded Ukraine and announced, like we're going to have massive increases in German defense spending. None of it happened. None of it. And they, along with several other European powers, have given their stockpiles of old weapons that they thought they would replace, except they haven't replaced them. So tanks, planes, and they're screwed.
But it's all World War II surplus. It's all 80-year-old equipment.
Right. That's right. I mean, I like F-16s. They're a wonderful plane. And they've decided to give them all to Ukraine, and fine. We've done some of that too, but we also have a very large air force of F-22s and F-35s. Meanwhile, Europe thinks they have all the time in the world. And of course, the best thing of all is the energy situation. Trump's been totally consistent about that. He said, and Biden literally put out the red carpet for Putin to invade Ukraine, sent every signal by the way he handled Afghanistan, and by the way he approved the Nord Stream pipeline development, and then
the day after he canceled Keystone XL.
That's right.
And so somehow Trump's the Russian stooge.
That's right.
Give me a break, man.
And they're buying oil and gas from the Russians even today. When they could buy it from us, by the way, they could. But they've decided to continue buying it from the Russians because it's being sold at a discount. And you know, when you wind the tape back to 2018, when the Germans literally laughed at President Trump at the UN General Assembly, I think Zelensky's finding out that that's not a great, insulting and mocking the President of the United States, who is right about what he's saying, or certainly representing his people in that regard. Maybe that's not a great way to win people over to your point of view.
Well, I'll tell you what, when you meet with Democratic senators like Chris Murphy of Connecticut and, Susan Power of the Obama administration, and they tell you to resist Donald Trump because they don't want him to get the victory, what do you expect is going to happen, Volodymyr? I mean, you look like an idiot, and everybody saw it. And nobody believes the spin that the media is putting on it. Everybody knows what happened here. And of course, within, what is this? This is only Tuesday, and he's already coming back with his tail between his legs and begging the White House to open the doors back.
Yeah, because he probably went to the Europeans and found out that everything they told him was just like somebody trying to raise money for a vaporware company, that doesn't have any real software, just a PowerPoint.
Vandalay Industries from Seinfeld.
Yeah, that's right. It is fake. It's phony. These guys cannot deliver on what they say they're going to do, and the Russians will frighten them back into their holes. And so now they're trying, but I do think that because the Europeans are stuck between a rock and a hard place, they are going to start trying to go into emergency poop mode and start arming. But you know what? You can't do it that quickly. It's not like World War II.
No, it's you don't just flip a switch. You got to fire up these factories and hire workers. I mean, they've been dinking around for decades, letting their stockpiles rot because they knew we'd have their back and we'd clean up their messes for them. Well, you know what? What interest do we have in cleaning up their messes when they're a bunch of socialists who put tariffs on all of our trade goods? That's the other thing. Everybody's up in arms about the supposed trade war that we're starting. Well, they've been even Europe has been putting tariffs on our goods to almost the same amount as China is. And that was part of my article. It was I didn't put the numbers in, but China's trade tariffs on us are somewhere around $295 billion a year. Europe's are $235 billion a year. So it's almost as much. Yeah, seriously. You're our free trade partners, really? And you know, we're subsidizing Canada to the tune of 150 billion dollars a year on tariffs. You know, Mexico is stealing all of our factories. So okay, yeah, let's play hardball here. I'm down with that. It's not about creating the external revenue service and running our entire economy on tariffs. That's not the point here. And the people that aren't seeing the play by Trump are deliberately, in many cases, deliberately mischaracterizing what he's doing. What he's doing is applying economic pressure to make a better deal that pays off for American manufacturers.
That's right. And Trump has made it clear that the "kick me" sign that was on America's back during President
that Biden put there himself.
Exactly. Yeah. He's like, oh, what's this back here? Yeah. President Poopy
Yeah.
Pants himself was just going to be that memory's gone, and it's not coming back because no president after this is going to be able to reverse this and not destroy it.
Well, they will. They'll put some spin on it. And,
They'll try. But I think Congress actually is going to put some shackles on it this time, because that was the big thing too, is that we relied maybe too heavily on executive orders on the follow through when we had the Congress in 2017 and 18.
Yeah, I think you're right there, and that's again Trump's pre-planning before he got elected and putting his transition team in place and asking them, okay, how do we make this stick? You know, how do we make these changes permanent? How do we dismantle all these things that are standing in my way, all these roadblocks that are in the way of the Trump economic?
Yeah, because look at the one thing that did change. Well, two things changed during his first presidency. Remember how they used to make fun of it was Russia, 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 and he said it's China. Remember Alec Baldwin making fun of that? Now they all agree it's China. The Democrats still think it's Russia, but they all agree that China is probably the bigger adversary. And then the other thing was they passed the Trump tax cuts, and those are still there, and Democrats are afraid to vote against those things now.
Yeah, no, because you don't want to give your constituents a 50% tax raise in the middle of an election season. That's political suicide.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Well, so yeah, Europe is failing. Europe is may not be able to save itself. So in a way, we're saving Europe from itself again by forcing it, by pushing it out of the nest and say, fly, rich people.
Yeah, sink or swim. Yeah, no, it's that tough love. You know, you got to solve your own damn problems. We're not going to give you cover anymore for stupid decisions like the Green New Deal and green energy scams and bad science and bad economic theory and socialism and relying on somebody else to defend your borders while you provide universal health care that nobody can access. And we're done with this.
Well, and there's a similar phenomena happening here domestically, and I think this is a good lead in to talking about, if you've got a few more minutes, your article that's about to come out. So they're going to shrink the size of the federal government, get rid of the bureaucracy, and I think the ultimate thing is they're going to, whatever funds we do continue spending are going to be block granted to states. And states are going to have to go and deliver on these things to their constituents. And if they want to do stuff that we don't want to pay for federally, like woke garbage or some of the climate nonsense that they've got going, then they can pay for themselves with their own tax base. And that leads right to Linda McMahon being confirmed as education secretary and what she said. Why don't you kind of mention that and then lead into what you're going to be talking about in that article?
Yeah, so she put out a letter today. She was just confirmed yesterday, and she put out a letter today referring to the final mission of the Department of Education. So she has taken her position as Secretary of Education, and she is fulfilling Donald Trump's promise to dismantle the Department of Education. Now, it's going to take more than just executive orders and bureaucratic reshuffling. There will probably need to be some sort of congressional cooperation on this, because the Department of Education was created in 1979 when they broke up the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare and turned it into several different organizations. I talked to a former staffer of the Department of Education who wishes to remain anonymous, but I got all kinds of inside information, and it's just outrageous. It's so infuriating to the average taxpayer. She was talking about how it would take years to get rules written that were authorized and mandated by Congress, because the people in charge of writing rules were so incompetent. When health, education, and welfare was broken up, all the other agencies used that as an opportunity in 1979 and 1980 to offload all of their incompetent employees and stick them in the Department of Education so that they could get rid of them and not have to deal with them anymore. And so there's this whole decades-long history of how incompetent they were. One anecdote she told me was that there was a guy who spent all of his time, he didn't do any work while he was in the office. All he did was file FOIA request after FOIA request, requesting public documentation on why he hadn't been promoted. He said that was his entire, all he did whenever he was in the office was file more Freedom of Information Act requests on why he wasn't being promoted at his job. So, it's crap like that the American people are completely sick of. Now, I will say that, like I said, it's not as easy as just signing some executive orders and getting rid of the agency. But Christopher Rufo, of City Journal and Manhattan Institute, has an intriguing idea here. He called on Congress to delegate authority to the executive via a congressional act, which has actually been done before many times between the 30s and the 80s, to reshuffle or reorganize cabinet level departments. So if he's given that mandate by Congress, he can do it himself once he's given.
Can that be done through reconciliation? Since in the Senate, it's going to be tough to get 60 votes in many cases.
Yeah, it probably can be. Yes. So I don't know the answer to that, but I think probably.
So
yes.
This is what Linda McMahon said. This is the quote. She says, President Trump believes that the bureaucracy in Washington should be abolished so that we can return education to the states where it belongs. I wholeheartedly support and agree with this mission. And now the Democrats in Oregon are going to have to bear the responsibility. They're going to have more money, most likely, than they would have, because it's not going to be soaked up by a bureaucracy. But it's not going to be $600 million for DEI training. It's going to be like, how are your reading and math scores doing? And the education department, its spending went up, and the test scores went down for 50 years.
That's exactly right. Yeah, no, and I cite those stats in my upcoming article. So yeah, it really is true. And there's fact checkers all out there saying, no, it's not really that bad. Yeah, it is really that bad. Stop trying to run cover for the Democrats. It's terrible. And so the I lost my train of
sorry.
thought.
Well, you were talking about the education department, and I just think that if it gets pushed out to the states, then
that's what it was. Yeah. So pushing it out to the states, that's exactly what we did with the abortion issue in the Dobbs decision at the Supreme Court. And everybody thought that Trump was Hitler then too, because of abortion. It's kind of an odd thing to say. But pushing it out to the states is what most legal scholars said it belonged in to begin with. So if you're doing block grants to the states of taxpayer money, they can fund whatever they want. In fact, the feds can exert potentially less pressure to make them stop doing DEI, woke, CRT stuff in the schools, depending on how some court challenges turn out. So they would have more control over their own schools and their own money, which I think actually is kind of the problem that they're facing. They don't want that responsibility, because then they're the ones that are to blame if
Yeah,
things
they
go
want to
wrong.
blame the federal government for their failure, and
That's
that's
exactly
going to
right.
be
Yeah.
over. And then there's going to be this battle between states uh, for who's doing what the people want and the right thing. And I just saw Idaho yesterday just passed something that's going to allow them essentially credits, $5,000 credit for students
Yep.
to go and use for any education the parents deem necessary, and 7,500 for disabled students. And meanwhile, here in Oregon, they're saying that they need more money, even though they're failing, and they have near the bottom in every category of education right now.
Right. How much money do they need? What's the budget in Oregon now? Is it $120 billion per biennium? It's something
It's enormous. I
rather
think it
ridiculous.
might be lower than that, but it's somewhere, I think, in the neighborhood of
It's
80.
over 100.
Yeah, it might be closer to 100, although it bloated during COVID, and then they raised the spending levels, and now they're like, well, we don't have enough money, and
Yeah, no, they raised the baseline. That's what they always do. They ratchet it up every time they get an
and I think
opportunity.
only maybe about 25 or 30 billion at this point is the state itself, and then the rest are federal transfers.
Well, federal transfers and fees and licenses and last time I looked at it about 10 years ago, that was like half the budget was fees. So yeah.
Yeah, and then a bunch of ending fund balances that they just keep there sitting and waiting to go and not use.
Well, you can't justify a higher budget if you don't have those ending fund balances.
That's right. Now
You got to spend the money to convince them you need more.
So just one more time, I want to make sure folks know where they can find you. Why don't you mention the site where you're the senior editor, and then also where they can find some of these articles that you've been publishing?
Yeah, so I've been publishing at a couple of different outlets that have taken my guest posts, including The Federalist, American Greatness, American Spectator, and then my main site, I'm the senior editor of restoration-news.com. And so I republish all of my guest posts there as well a couple of days later. So you can always find all my work at restoration-news.com. You can find me on X at Charger Jeff, formerly Twitter, and that's where I post. I'm my most active on Twitter. On Facebook these days, it's just memes because you can't get away with anything cool.
No, and Facebook is kind of it's diluted. You can't really follow and get a consistent thing. Their algorithms are forcing silly stuff at you.
That's exactly right. That's a really good point. You can't have a consistent conversation. You can't even see things in chronological order. It's ridiculous.
It's hilarious too that Trump is once again seeing his wealth expand because of the Trump Media Group and Truth Social, which is technically competing with X, but the shrinkage of all the other ones and the abandonment of the fake news media and the fake news social media is maybe one of the biggest stories of this last year, because it's changed everything, hasn't it?
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that just tells you there's an appetite for direct to consumer news when Truth Social and X can coexist and actually play off of each other and still be successful as competitors, even though they're playing off each other. So it's a very odd dynamic. I wrote an article for restoration-news.com a couple of days after Election Day about Donald Trump's victory presaging the complete destruction of the corporate media ecosphere. I think the corporate media is and we've seen it, I mean, they're firing Joy Reid and that kind of thing, but they're not changing their narrative. They're not changing with the times to cover the things that people care about. So they're just feeding by continuing to lie to the American public on a mass scale. They're continuing to feed all of these alternate news sources, and people are saying, well, I know that's BS. I'm going to go over here and read the truth, and then I'll be informed. So they're actually not only are they not effective at pushing the propaganda, but they're actually pushing people into the truth.
Yeah, and I talk to people every day who are still stuck in the matrix, and they just don't realize that they're actually being fed complete garbage. But they're used to a steady diet of it. But then there's people. Was it Tapper? Who was the guy that just wrote the?
Yes, that book. Oh, about Biden's cognitive decline, and how did they hide it from all of us? If only there was a position in the news where people would be paid to investigate things that are controversial and then report them to the American public. Jake, have you ever heard of this idea before?
Well, we've got to have you back sometime in the coming few months, because things are going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you've got some great articles. And you're right. I mean, there's a revolution going on. It's unfolding, and the Democrats they're not in retreat. They're in disarray, and they don't know it.
Yeah, they don't even know which direction to shoot in. Of course, they don't even know how to shoot a gun. So we're safe there.
Well, let's hope the gang that can't shoot straight keeps shooting themselves in the foot, and we will keep telling the truth wherever we get the opportunity. Thanks again for joining me here, Jeff. It's been fantastic, and great to see you again. And
yeah, you too,
and
man.
we're still fighting the good fight out here in Oregon. It's a different kind of fight than elsewhere, but it's being impacted by all these things that are happening. And the Democrats here aren't really proven to be a smarter version of the party than the rest of the country. So maybe they're going to get their comeuppance. We'll have to see what happens as President Trump likes to.
Well, I wish you all the luck in the world on that, because boy, do you need
we
it.
do. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll look forward to having you on again. And
I
appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for watching us here today. Make sure that you share this show with everyone you can. This is not something you're getting anywhere else. Just like you hear the alternative media is coming in, frank, honest media that says what we really think and tells the truth. You need to share that with everyone you can, and enjoy the president's address to Congress. And we'll see you on the next episode of The Captive Audience as well tomorrow night with Sonny and Don. Have a good night, everyone.